Welcome back to my video game series. So this is the 6th episode in the series. So in my first video I ranked my top 10 favorite NES games. Second video, top 10 favorite SNES games. Third video, my top 10 favorite PS1 games, PlayStation 1 games. Fourth video, my favorite PlayStation games from PS1, PS2 and PS3 because I haven't never played any PS4 games. Then the fifth video was my ranking on my top 10 favorite Nintendo games on all consoles and everything. So this is the 6th video. So and I thought I gonna rank my all-time favorite video games of all time, my top 10 favorite video games of all time. I first thought I'm gonna do this in two parts, my top 20 favorite video games of all time, which I could easily have done, but as I had said in earlier videos before, I'm gonna do my top 10 favorite video games where it all gonna lead up to. I have played the Xbox consoles, Sega consoles and other PC and whatever, but my favorites has always been the Nintendo consoles and the PlayStation consoles. So the order has changed here a bit from my Nintendo games and whatever, so that what happens sometimes. That's why I say all the time, today this is my number one, my ranking and everything. So feel guilty lefting some games out. As I has said before, I think The Legend of Zelda is the greatest video game series of all time. Not my favorite, but the greatest. I actually have no Zelda games. Not The Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past, and not which is known as The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, which is known as the greatest video game of all time on the N64. Not in my top 10, my personal top 10. And also remember, this is not the greatest video games of all time. It's my personal favorite top 10 video games. But some are obvious choices, but anyway, so 10 Super Mario Bros. 3 1988 NES, side-scrolling platformer developed by Nintendo EAD, one of my favorite video game developers of all time. Shigeru Miyamoto created Super Mario, Donkey Kong, and Zelda and everything. So this was IGN's number one NES game of all time. IGN is the number one source to go to when you check out the video games and rankings and reviews and everything. So, and at one point this was IGN's number one video game of all time, but it was their number one NES game and still is so. Yeah, this is a very groundbreaking side-scroller platformer, more than Super Mario Brothers 1. Here you could travel between landscapes, do a lot of cheating, not cheating in codes, but cheating to go to different worlds and like Super Mario Brothers 1. But yeah, this is one of the greatest games of all time. So 9, Contra 3, The Alien Wars, 1992, SNES. My favorite Contra game. It's a run and gun game, also my favorite run and gun game. Follow up to Contra and Super C, second Contra game. Every other level is side-scrolling horizontal, and every other level is top-down vertical. They use the Mode 7 graphical effects to create an interesting perspective, like fake 3D. Very good in this game. The third level is absolutely extraordinary. One of my favorite levels in video games of all time. So many bosses, hard as hell. This game is very hard, known as one of the hardest games of all time, but I beat it in different difficulties and everything. So the final boss, it's known as one of the hardest bosses in video games of all time, but I beat it also in different difficulties. So I never played this game on the SNES system. I got it. I always wanted to, but I never got a hold on it. So I played it when I was grown up on emulators on my laptop with the SNES controllers you put in USB. But yeah, this is a great game. Absolutely amazing. Even though the graphics are worse in laptops, not the original system, and don't play on an SD TV. But anyways, one of my favorite games of all time. 8 Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island 1995 SNES side-scrolling platformer developed by Nintendo EAD. Yeah, this is a phenomenal game. It takes place before, I guess, before all other Super Mario Brothers games. It's a follow-up to Super Mario World, but on the SNES. But this takes place before when Mario is a kid riding. You play as Yoshi, where Mario riding on his back. Many puzzles, many hidden stuff. Very complicated at times. Amazing game. 7 Donkey Kong Country 1994 SNES side-scrolling platformer, known for having one of the best graphics on the SNES system. Amazing graphics. Developed by Rare, also one of my favorite video game developers. So yeah, this game goes from 0 to 100%. So let's say you finish the game with 64%. There's hidden stuff and things you have missed out in levels, and to get to 100%. Love that concept. We're gonna talk more about that later. So here they introduced a new character. Donkey Kong's nephew Diddy Kong, and in this game you always play with Donkey Kong, Diddy Kong. You can chase them up how you want, and depending on the levels how and stuff, what they're good for use. And when both die, you're dead, and you get Diddy Kong, or if you play as Diddy Kong, you find Donkey Kong in tunnels, and if you play Donkey Kong as Donkey Kong, you find Diddy Kong in tunnels to get to the 2 back. So yeah, this is an amazing game. So all of these games, so Super Mario Brothers, probably known as the greatest NES game, Contra 3D Alien Wars, Super Mario World 2, and Donkey Kong Country, known as 3 of the best SNES games. So yeah, and in Donkey Kong Country they introduced a new villain, King K. Rool, Evil Crocodile, one of my favorite final boss scenes of all time in video games. Amazing. And I like this over Donkey Kong Country 2 Diddy Kong's Quest, which is known as the better game, but I prefer the original over that. So 6 X-Lay 1992 SNES, same as Contra 3. Every other level is side-scrolling horizontal, and every other level is top-down vertical. They use the Mode 7 here as in Contra 3D Alien Wars. I have never ever seen a better use of Mode 7 in a video game than X-Lay. It's like fake 3D. You had to play it because there was no 3D really. So you had to play the game to understand what I mean. So developed by Konami as Contra 3D Alien Wars. One of my favorite video game developers. X-Lay is a shoot 'em up shmup game. So there's no real game who is known as the #1 shmup game of all time. But for me personally, X-Lay is my #1 shmup game of all time. My favorite shmup game of all time. So let's move on to 5 Street Fighter Alpha 2 1996, PS1, PlayStation 1, originally released on arcades earlier the same year. I never played the arcade version, but it looks amazing. But this is a fucking amazing port. Amazing port. The Alpha Street Fighter Alpha series are prequels to the Street Fighter 2 series, like Street Fighter 2, the World Warrior, Street Fighter 2, Hyper Fighting, and you know, which was the first real fighting game of all time. The fighting game who sets the rules and standards of every fighting game that came after. Developed by Capcom, also one of my favorite video game developers of all time. But I gotta say though that Street Fighter Alpha 2 on the PS1 port is my favorite fighting game of all time. Yeah, over Street Fighter 2, the World Warrior, and all the Street Fighter hyper fighting and in the whole series. Yeah. Street Fighter Alpha 2 is my favorite fighting game of all time. Absolutely. Over Street Fighter 2. Yeah. And absolutely adore and love the look of it. The cartoonish look of the characters and the graphics. So beautiful. Amazing game. My favorite fighting game of all time. 4, Crash Team Racing, or CTR, Crash Team Racing 1999, PS1 kart racing game, my favorite kart racing game of all time. Developed by Naughty Dog, my favorite video game developers of all time. Yeah, as in Donkey Kong Country, as the Crash Bandicoot games, they take inspiration from this, but from the Crash Bandicoot, from the Donkey Kong Country games, you go in percentage. Here you go to, I think it was 103%. So we talk about this later also. So 3, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1999, PS1, PlayStation 1, my favorite skateboarding game of all time, over Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, which is known as the best Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, but the original Tony Hawk's Pro Skater has so much meaning to me. It's my favorite Tony Hawk's Pro Skater game. Skateboarding Extreme Sports. This was really the first skateboarding. There are other skateboarding games before, but this was the skateboarding games that set the standards of all other skateboarding games after, like influenced all other skateboarding games. There are games like the Skate series and a few others, but none have come even close to this. Developed by Neversoft, probably my second favorite video game developers. So this game didn't have the manual as all other skateboarding games. The Tony Hawk's Pro Skater games, I don't fucking care. Tony Hawk Pro Skater is my favorite in the series. It's absolutely amazing. And here we gonna go into this number 2. I thought was my favorite, as I talked in another video. I thought was my favorite game of all time. 2, Crash Bandicoot Warped 1998, the third Crash Bandicoot game, PS1, 3D platformer. And in the level, some are 3D and move up to side-scrolling 3D. So, yeah, developed by Naughty Dog. Again, Naughty Dog. This game goes to 105%. Holy shit! In some ways, this is the most complicated, complex game I have ever played. You go in the warps with 5 levels in every warp, like in the second Crash Bandicoot games came Crash Bandicoot Cortex Strikes Back. Yeah, this is known as the best Crash Bandicoot game. And I forgot to say, many of these games are known as the best games of all time anyway. So, as is this. So, there are 2 stuff here in 2 levels that are almost impossible to find if you just don't stumble upon it on accident. Fuck. And so complex, so hard game, and some of the hidden levels are almost impossible to beat, so hard. So yeah, I'm gonna do a recap of all games later. 1. Uncharted 3 Drake's Deception 2011 PS3. Action-adventure, third-person shooter platformer developed by Naughty Dog, my favorite video game developers of all time. Yeah, this is my favorite game of all time. Over Crash Bandicoot Warped, which I thought was my favorite game, but as I thought and thought, Uncharted 3 Drake's Deception 2011 is my favorite video game of all time. When I played the Uncharted series, the 3 first, I never played the first on PS4. I want to play that, but yeah, this it's like playing a movie. All the Uncharted games, and this was the most astonishing video game I had ever played in my whole life. In all senses of you think of an astonishing game, yeah, my favorite video game of all time. I can't imagine any video game can come close to this for me personal. If not Crash Bandicoot Warp, but which is close, but maybe Uncharted 4, A Thief's End, which I long to play. So, a little recap. Super Mario Brothers 3, known as the best NES game and one of the best SNES, one of the best video games of all time. Contra 3D Alien Wars, Super Mario World, Yoshi's Island, Donkey Kong Country, known as one of the best SNES games and some of the best games in the world. X-Line 992, known as one of the best SNES games and SNES shoot 'em up games and one of the best shoot 'em up games. Street Fighter Alpha 2, known as one of the best fighting games. Crash Team Racing, known as one of the best kart racing games. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, of course, known as one of the best skateboarding games. Crash Bandicoot Warped, known as one of the best PS1 games and one of the best games ever. It's known as the best Crash Bandicoot game and known as one of the best Naughty Dog games. So, but anyways, 1. Uncharted 3 Drake's Deception 2011 PS3, my favorite video game of all time. The most extraordinary, astonishing video game I have ever played. Is hard to think any game who can beat this. Probably Uncharted 4, A Thief's End on the PS4. So this is not the last video in my video game series. There's so much other things to do, like ranking my favorite video game developers, genres of video games, but yeah, anyways, see you next time. Bye. See you soon.